Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Nicholas Samstag, and this is the newest episode of Mental Health and Business. I'm privileged today to have a very, very smart and energetic person named Annika Lindstrom, who is the CEO of a new company called medtech, which has in the
Sorry. It's called Reminded.
medtech reminded, which is called Reminded. I can edit that out. How did I get medtech
Uh, no, the startup name is Reminded.
reminded? Let's start
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Hello, everybody. This is Nicholas Samstag. I'm very happy today to have Annika Lindstrom here, who's the CEO of a new and revolutionary company called Reminded, which is helping all kinds of mental issues in the world. So, welcome, Annika.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be on the podcast and have this conversation. I think we will cover some good topics today.
Yeah. So, tell us about, if you don't mind. You have a really interesting background also in sports, which I would love you to share with our audience before, and then take us into this interesting company of yours.
Yeah, happy to. I would kind of classify myself as having worked through three different distinct phases in my life so far. A large majority of that time was spent as a high performance athlete, eventually becoming a youth Olympian in table tennis, then transitioned into a molecular bioscientist at my university, and currently a medtech founder who took a big leap moving from her small little city of Helsinki, Finland to now be located here in San Francisco, California. But basically, I started table tennis when I was 6 years old, fell in love with the sport. And I think, like, regardless if it has been sports, academics, or now running this healthcare startup, my work ethic has stayed quite consistent throughout all of those three personalities, which I consider is truly important if you want to take any of those verticals from scratch and like build it up to something more significant, because that requires the same amount of grit, persistence, and dedication. So then at the age of 18, I took a bigger leap of faith to dedicate more time towards table tennis and took a gap year from school. And then at the end of that season, I qualified to the Youth Olympics and played there at in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So that was probably one of the like bigger kind of turning points for me to see that there's a lot of potential within you that you probably initially didn't think.
Mm.
But then that also like inspired me to then dedicate my life towards healthcare, because this whole experience also took a toll on my own mental and physical health for a while. And
Mm.
it just kind of like gave me the necessary wake up call to recognize how fundamental this aspect is in your life.
Hmm. Who are your inspirations? Did you have I assume you had some mentors along the way who helped you, or
Yeah, so I was in a quite unique position to have my dad as my coach. So
oh.
that's definitely a quite interesting relationship that you have with a parent, and then kind of being able to distinguish the line between when he's your coach or when he's your father. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I think he was the one who was one of the first individuals who actually saw like my own potential and was able to like unlock it from an external perception. So he and my mom has always been like the core supporters of the different ventures that I've dived into, and yeah, I'm really thankful to have a set of parents who not only inspire me but also support me to like a full extent. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, so tell us about Reminded.
Yes. So Reminded is a medical technology startup developing a rapid cortisol sensor test through a saliva sensor. So what it basically does is provide a quantitative value of cortisol within minutes without having the reliance on laboratory settings or invasive blood work, which is the traditional way of measuring biomarkers up to this point. So what we want to do is basically provide a new avenue of objective health data towards specifically mental health care as we're now starting out to ensure that continuous tracking for problems such as PTSD or patients who are coming in for addiction can be tracked over time and kind of seeing in what direction their whole treatment and patient journey is moving towards, not only basing it on subjective questionnaires and interviews, which is the standard of care right now.
Mm-hmm. So is there, I'm not familiar with cortisol studies. Is there a baseline reading for cortisol?
There is, yes, and also kind of a standardized way of how you would measure it, let's say over a 24-hour cycle. So since it follows this kind of um, rhythm of peaking in the morning and then kind of naturally declining over time in the afternoon and night, by taking a test like from the morning and in the afternoon and maybe even in the night, then you kind of get a standardized value throughout that. And if you do have, let's say, like prolonged stress over an extended period of time, then those kinds of values will most likely be disrupted in some kind of way. But in most cases, when it comes to these kinds of issues, they go very much so like unnoticed if you don't, send off your laboratory test on a frequent basis, which is a very straining process to do. So what we want to do is basically open up a way of making it much more accessible and easy for people to take these insights.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you're and so the folks who will use this will be physicians for their patients and then patients themselves.
So right now we're taking it through the more institutional route by working with hospitals and clinics who are working for specifically behavioral healthcare. And in terms of where we are for our progress right now is setting up a smaller clinical trial with a hospital here on the West Coast to validate our technology in a hospital setting and taking it through the whole regulatory requirements to have the sensor and the values like up to the standard that is required for us to commercialize.
That's great. So you're going to be dealing with strictly PTSD folks or other patients as well.
Starting out now, where we have seen the most traction is from patients who are working through issues of coming in from addiction and also PTSD. Veterans is a good one as well, since it's a customer segment that has a lot of room for improvement and a great need to help out for. So we've done a sufficient amount of uh, kind of customer research to see where we can help out the most in the earliest stages, and these have been the ones that have been naturally being attracted to us as well.
So what are the have you thought? I'm sure you have thought about what the therapies are that will be given to these folks if they need it.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Sorry, better question. That was all jumble. Um, how do I say this? Will the findings show you or suggest to you what potential treatments might be applicable?
For sure. So what we have heard from the clinicians themselves in why they would want to implement Reminded into their settings is because let's say we have a patient group who are coming off medication, them being able to objectively and quantifiably track how they're doing in terms of their like internal health over time will be very beneficial for them to know, um, do we have to make some small interventions or changes in the current therapy that we're recommending, or are they kind of like going in the opposite direction, or do we have to put them on medication again? So I think that's the most value that we can add to this specific group that we want to work with currently in the coming months. And then for us, like with this first trial, the main thing is to truly validate the technology and then take it into like a phase 2 trial, which would be over a more extended 6 month or 12-month period. And therefore we can like even more comprehensively like take into consideration the feedback from the clinicians themselves.
So are the therapies exclusively medication based?
The therapy is that what?
Are the therapies that these folks will get, are they exclusively medicine based, or are they going to be, is there talk therapy?
It's a mixture of both. So of course, cognitive behavioral therapy is a big one also for this group. But then also a few would already be like on medication, so it just depends on the individual, I would say, that gets admitted.
It's interesting because I'm a psychoanalyst, and so we're very much about talking about things and psychology stuff. So I just wonder, there's some people who would be perhaps better treated with more talk therapy and less medicine, and vice versa. I guess I mean this is obviously at the beginning stages, but there's some really interesting questions there, right? So some people will very much want one form of therapy, medicine therapy, and other people will say, I'm not really into that. I want to talk to somebody. Um, do you have any data on premorbid conditions?
I'm sorry, I can't really hear what you say.
Premorbid conditions. Do you have any data on premorbid conditions for this population?
Pre,
Pre premorbid meaning, were there any pre-existing um, disruptions prior to the testing?
um,
Did these people have alcoholism before they
yeah,
they they got so stressed out, or did they have schizophrenia? Did they have bipolar disease?
yeah. For like the whole recording and everything, can you say the question again as you originally said, and then I will give you my answer? Yeah.
Sure.
Mm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So the question is, what were the pre? Do you have data on what the premorbid conditions were for the populations that you're testing?
So most of them have been that we're currently would be working with would be previously going through issues with drugs or alcoholism, and then also another like institution that we would be working with are teens who have been coming out of depression, suicidal like thoughts, and so on. So we have a few like subcategories of patient groups that we want to work with.
That's so interesting. I mean, that is really fascinating and great work to have that kind of data. To have so you'll have data on, have some of these folks been in therapy before?
Well, since we're not in the hospital like currently, and we don't have like all of the background data still on those patients, I would have like more definite answers like in a few months'
Yeah,
time. But
right,
yeah.
right. It sounds like a very thoughtful and multi-pronged approach. Um, I've been in, yeah, that sounds great. So I assume, I mean, this may be presumptuous of me, but I assume, given the discipline and the energy that you've expressed already, you're probably no stranger to stress.
Oh, for sure not. I think that has been quite prominent throughout my whole lifespan in various ways. But I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing because I believe to some extent a healthy amount of stress is needed for us to function as just like normal human beings.
Right.
But being able to navigate those more extreme ends of that is very important, and I think I've been really good, especially now running Reminded, to implement like daily routines to keep myself sane. In because I do want to stay like long term in the game, and I think like if you dedicate your lives towards like a healthcare startup, then it's very hard to like detach fully from the work that you do, which
Mhm.
is I think then more healthy to implement here and there like small things that will bring joy to your life, like outside of just let's say raising money or securing down a clinical partnership. So something that really helps me is, for example, like journaling. I have to exercise also like at least like an hour a day.
Mhm.
I think I've become really good at surrounding myself around a healthy environment of individuals who strive towards like good and bigger things for themselves, which is really important. So like your support network. But there are like some pillars at least that help me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great to hear. One of the one of the discoveries I've made doing this podcast is a lot of folks who are starting up companies or already in companies that are interested in mental health. All the practitioners that have all of them. I think pretty much all of them have their own discipline. Their discipline is evidenced not just in their business life, but in their non-business life, to make sure that they're involved with people and situations that they find meaningful and worthwhile, and in those areas not being nearly as competitive or competitive at all. Really, just having the focus be more on experience and all of those things. So what parts of tell us what parts of this extremely exciting startup situation, what parts do you like the most, and which parts are the most taxing for you?
Um, I can give an answer that, for example, fundraising involves both a lot of excitement, but a lot of effort and tears as well. So that's the one of the main operational assignments that I have, of course, being the CEO. We closed around in the summer of 2024 and have now been progressing quite well with that runway. But I feel that something that truly gives me a lot of joy on a day-to-day basis is working with excellent individuals who you get to like scale something up from absolutely nothing to something that soon could be commercialized. And
Hmm.
I'm very fortunate to be working with our chief scientific officer, Sanjita Jasmine, whose whole PhD work is surrounded or based on for this biosensor. And then our chief technology officer, his name is Adel Shah, a mechanical engineer. And just being able to depend on each other in a way that we get to grow as individuals, but then collectively like go towards a bigger mission is excellent. And yeah, so I think like that is the main reason of why this whole journey becomes much less taxing, because if everything all the time would be on your own shoulders, then I think eventually there will become like a wall against you that you can take it to the next level. So I'm really appreciative of both of them.
Well, that sounds great. Did you know these people prior to your involvement in all of this, or did you meet one another along the way?
Yes, so I started out to build a foundation for Reminded for around like 8, 9, 10 months on my own to just do the like foundational research around it and take it just from like a small science project to a more like solid startup, I would say. After that, I stumbled across a deal through one of my industry contacts, and prior to that, I had like a lot of interviews with different mechanical engineers and people within his field, but nothing really stuck. But then I fortunately got in contact with him, and we started working quite well right from the start. After that, I read one of Sanjita's articles on this particular like saliva-based technology and was truly like amazed and impressed by it. I just had to like get in contact with her. So I sent off a small little email to her, and then we got into conversations. And she just finished her degree from Oregon State University and wanted to take it now out of the laboratory into something that could be very beneficial to society. So yeah, and then we started working together as well. So
That sounds great. That sounds very organic. Like it just developed in a way that worked.
for sure, yes, but I would say that it required a lot of heavy lifting and effort from my end to kind of track down those individuals because um, I feel that being in a very science-based, heavily academic research um, field, a lot of individuals do not have the desire to take themselves out of the traditional like box of what they know. So
Mm.
finding individuals who are not only excellent within like technology or research, but also have that entrepreneurial spirit is a great mixture to have, but hard to find. So I think like it was worth the extra effort from my end to find them, and yeah, now we've been progressing very well.
That's great. That's wonderful to hear. Could could you tell us something about the transition from sports to science?
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels between the two worlds. Um, you, at least in my opinion, have the same amount of grit when you try to, you know, scale up a skill that you don't necessarily have from start. It comes with a lot of trial and error, a lot of frustration, repetitive efforts that doesn't lead to the immediate result that you probably would want to have. But I think like something that I've been telling myself like over and over and over again is that there must be some kind of physical law that if I'm putting in all of this energy and effort and I'm making the necessary iterations, I'm eating the right foods, I'm exercising, I'm trying to articulate and develop my communication skills on a daily and weekly and monthly basis, that it has to pay off at some point. And I believe that the people who simply can't quit will eventually be the ones who win.
Mm.
Um, but it's a mental game that you have to play with yourself, definitely, to stay on track. And I can only entertain the scenario that I would want the outcome to be, because if not, what would be the reason for me to start this in the first place if I would all the time go and doubt and not believe that it's possible to pursue. So
Great. You've used that word a couple times. How would you define that grit? There's a wonderful movie by John Wayne, very old movie called True Grit, um,
hmm,
which I always think of. What is grit to you?
a sense of inner belief that my efforts will pay off, and the ability to simply continue and to iterate regardless of how much difficulty that you're faced with along the way.
That's great. I talk to my patients a lot about agency, which is a term that we use in my field, uh, which I think has a lot of grit in it. Meaning, agency is having agency is the capacity to envision something and then get it done. I mean, just to say it in a very simple way. And it's and sometimes that involves being gritty. It involves being, you know, high stamina and all of that. And sometimes it means being soft. It means being available and receptive. And it's not a warrior stance. I mean, there's a lot of warrior stance in it, but I think that there's also a kind of personal fluency in being able to you know navigate the unpredictable waters, and as you say, just not quit. There's always a reason to quit. There's always a reason to sit down, and sometimes you have to sit down. So that appeals to me. It appeals to me a lot. Okay, so here's a hard question, but I always like answering it because I think it's a creative question. There's a Russian dramaturg named Stanislavski who used to who read a lot of Freud, who used to ask his actors, if the scene wasn't taking place, what would you be doing? And I think that's a fun question to ask you. So if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
Hmm. Um, I would see myself helping out athletes, but
Mm.
not at all with their training or nutrition or uh, amount of hours that they're supposed to be spending in the gym, much more so on the mental aspect of things. Um, because I would say that on that like highest level of performance, everyone can put a forehand on the table, but not everyone can do it when it's the last set at 10-10. So I would say like being able to navigate your inner conversation is the main driver for like excellent results within athletics. So I would love to help out for that, because with the knowledge that I now have, I would have probably been a much better athlete than what I was at 16, 17, 18, because I definitely didn't know how to like navigate my inner conversations in a favorable way, which uh, led to a bad result at those like most critical moments sometimes.
Mm,
So yeah, I would say like that would be probably a field that I would want to help out for, if not this. So
it's fascinating. You might have become a psychologist.
sports psychologist, maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a friend and colleague who does that for. He wasn't trained as a sports psychologist, but he that's how he functions. He does that for golfers.
Hmm.
Uh, he does
All
a
right.
lot of for golfers who predictably at a certain point just miss shots that they shouldn't miss. And it's interesting. I mean, this is sort of broadening the field philosophically here, but I think if the goal is simply performance, regardless of what the performance is, I think the person misses many things, right? And then they become robots, or they can become robots. They can become excellent robots, and that I think is a big danger. On the other hand, if the goal isn't performance so much as clarity of who they are as a person and how to deal with those internal dialogues in a way that alerts them to where they came from in terms of their family historical, if there's any intergenerational transmission of trauma, what that was about, like if there's a depth and um, an exploration of nuance that leads to high performance. I think that's the goal for me, and that's what he tries to do with his golfers. I mean, it's not, you know, it's great to be the top golfer or the top, you know, paddle tennis, and that's great. But nobody on their excuse me, nobody on their deathbed, I guarantee you, says, "Thank God I was the best golfer." Like nobody says that.
No, definitely not. There has to be something much deeper tied to your identity than the results that you're able to produce, let's say within sports or within a startup that you want to scale up to become a success story. And I've learned that probably also the hard way, because I think like wealth and fame will never satisfy you to the same extent as, let's say, like the personal relationships that you're able to then share those with. Um, and yeah, I believe in looking at your life from a more like holistic view, where the whole journey of becoming the person that you could see yourself be in a, let's say, 10 years time is the fun part. And that will naturally like then lead to the results that you would want. Um, and being able to detach yourself from those external sources of validation. So
Yeah, good to hear that. That's not a popular opinion these days.
I was really, but
I,
I can guarantee that that's why a lot of people feel quite miserable nowadays also.
I
So
completely agree. I completely agree.
mhm.
But I think we're in a massively superficial culture, sitting with oneself, and I'm not talking about woo woo therapies. I'm talking about a lack of thoughtfulness. Trying to
Oh,
see thought
indeed,
is
yeah,
really difficult. I don't know. Were you ever a fan of Saturday Night Live? Do you know what that is? Saturday Night Live, the skit
yeah,
show.
yeah.
Years
Watched
years
it. It's,
you have I
yeah,
haven't watched I haven't watched it in years, but years ago, Michael Jordan was on with a very funny comedian, and the comedian was asking him, like, Michael, you must be really nervous when you go on the basketball court. I mean, all these people are looking at you, and if you mess up, you're going to be ashamed. And Michael Jordan was like, no, not at all. This sort of went on this way. The guy said, well, what's going on? And Michael Jordan said, I'm the best basketball player in the world. That's what I do. I thought there was something, there's some, I mean, I have no idea if Michael Jordan was or is some kind of crazy person, but he certainly seemed very balanced about all that. It's like he trained hard, he has the body, that's what he does. It wasn't like now he didn't seem impressed by his fame. He seemed
Mm.
very sort of balanced by his talents. And I think that's, that always struck me as like, I hope that's true.
Yeah, no, I admire like his mindset for sure. And I would say like the internal perception of who you are has to come from a very like secure place, and that takes a lot of time and like processing things that probably like previously has happened in your life. And I took like a dedicated maybe 1 or 2 years of my life to figure out like what are the like fundamental like core values that I would want to be known by, and then try to live my life accordingly to that. And I believe like something that kind of struck with me was that I had a very hard time like even like sitting alone with myself for a couple of minutes when I started like trying to meditate or journal or and so on. And I feel like that kind of insecurity is something that haunts a lot of people nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I like how your like self-respect uh, on what level that is will always be reflected into everything else that you do. And I see like the greatest performers or athletes in of our time, let's say like Michael Jordan or something, that they have built out such like strong foundations within themselves that there's like nothing that could break them down. And I think that's very, very powerful, because that's something that no one can take away from you, and what I want to strive towards as well. So
Yeah, right, right, right. Maybe there's nothing that will break you down, but you're certainly going to have bad days.
oh yeah, yeah. Like most of the time, like even running reminded, 95% of the time you do feel quite uncomfortable, out of place, feel that you say the wrong things or that you're underqualified or whatever. And then a small percentage of that is what the like general public sees when you announce a funding round on LinkedIn or whatever it is. But I think like if you can kind of recognize that it can be hard, and that's okay, then it feels less straining also. Um, I would say that nowadays, like a healthy amount of discomfort is necessary and good, especially like in the society that we live in today, where everything is so accessible and easy and comfortable. So yeah, I have maybe a little bit more of a controversial opinion on that, but I would say that there's a great distinction between like um, suffering through a mental illness, or let's say, or um, staying in a comfort zone where your own potential can't be met. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think Winston Churchill said most of the work in the world is done by people who can feel better. So I think
Hmm.
I think one of the conceits of this has been true for years, but I think it's much truer these days. Is that there's this notion that the goal is to be happy, and my long deceased father said, quoted an article actually, that happiness is for pigs, which I
Hmm.
which I always appreciated. That's an article written by a theologian and a psychoanalyst. Um, but yeah, yeah, we haven't used the word narcissism, but it's certainly relevant here. I think, unfortunately, a lot of folks who are driven by fear to be high performers, and in the midst of all that, they lose sight of who they are essentially, which is which is too bad. It's too bad. What about so many interesting things here. What has it been like for you as a young woman doing this?
I get that question like quite often, of course, since I am in a industry field where it's mostly surrounded by older individuals who have three PhDs on their walls and so on. But I would say that execution versus X amount of years of experience will outperform most of the things in any kind of industry that you go in. Um, I try to detach myself from the extra layer of difficulty that, let's say, a young woman personality have to face with when let we go into like fundraising or anything else, because it's already hard enough. So I have just come to notice also now when we secured our first funding round, or when we were able to get together with this hospital now to set up a clinical trial in a few months' time, that if you're able to produce the results that are needed at each stage of your startup's development, then people will appreciate it regardless of what personality or gender you are. And I've just come to notice also that I might be setting myself up in a environment or a game that is a little bit harder for specifically my individual type, but it doesn't mean that that will hinder me in any kind of way. And I think like seeing the different examples of successes around me from excellent women who have killed it in their own field also helps out a lot. But yeah, I think that there are so many other factors that I can't control. So everything that I do is to focus my energy towards the thing that will move our minded forward, and not some weird comment that I might get every now and then. So
Hmm. Hmm. I assume you've gotten some weird comments.
for sure, like they come and go every now and then, but um, I have two options in those situations also. Either I try to bite back and then I lower myself to that weak level, or then I just recognize like, okay, this is not someone that I would want to have attached to our company or work with, and then we can just like silently move away from that situation, and then let's let our results just speak for themselves. And I think like people will notice then later on.
That's so smart and unfortunately so rare. I think I think so often people are sort of tortured by the nasty people or the people who treat them badly, as opposed to doing exactly what you just said, which is just recognizing that why are you even interested in that person if they treat you that way? Um, a pernicious uh, ailment that I see a lot is not so much even the actual people, but the internal voices, right? So you have internal voices that are acting like bigots or, forgive me, assholes. You have those voices in your head, and then you're really
Mm,
worried about it. And I say to patients regularly, I said, if you were to meet these voices as people, you wouldn't give them the time of day. These are
no.
idiots. These are mean spirited, you know. Anyway, yeah. So, we would call that various internalizations that happen through the course of development, where they live within you until you expunge them. Um,
Yeah, and definitely, and I would say also like individuals who have a need of uh, pushing others down in order to feel better most likely are not so satisfied with themselves. So I think like anyone who comments or lashes out on you, that just like speaks so much more about their personality than you at all. So yeah, but it's of course sometimes like hard to detach from different punches that you get hit in your face with. But I've grown quite a lot, I would say, during this past year in many ways, in only in a better direction. So
Yeah, no, it sounds like in addition to being a very savvy business person, you have spent a good and thoughtful amount of time looking at yourself, which is unusual. You know, I just share this with you because it's funny that the analytic institute that I graduated from and used to teach at has a photograph on the bulletin board of Freud when he's probably about, I don't know, 55, 60 years old. He looks very handsome. He's smoking a cigar. And someone's drawn a bubble over his head, right? And it says, before you accept a diagnosis of clinical depression, just make sure you're not surrounded by assholes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's like such a heavy emphasis on like taking care of your body and exercising the X amount of right time per day and per week, and eating your vegetables and so on. But I think a lot of people's like sources of unhappiness is not being in a favorable environment, which goes like so unnoticed. Whether that be from your family or like friends that you have known for an extended period of time, but probably have like grown apart from. And it's very healthy to just like take a step back every now and then and like kind of question like, is the quality of the relationships that I'm surrounding myself by currently like in favor of the direction that I would want to take for my life, or are they dragging me down in some kind of way? So I base my surroundings now so much more on quality rather than the duration of how long I've known them. But it's tough sometimes, of course. But I think that will definitely like amplify your life happiness in so many ways.
Yeah, here. I couldn't agree more. There was actually an article that I just sent to a bunch of people from, where was it from? The Atlantic or the New Yorker on how increasingly common it is for people to not see family members at a certain point. You know, with the compulsion to, you know, stay in and stay with the family, and blood's thicker than water and all of that. You know, there are so many examples now. I certainly have several in my practice where people have gone out of their way to be in therapy with their parents or their family, and it's just, you know, they keep feeling abused. They keep feeling it's unpleasant. At a certain point, they just say, unless and until you want to have these difficult conversations, I really can't see you anymore. You know, and it's sad, but
Mm.
it's healthier than staying in chronically toxic situations, you know, year after year after year. Um, anyway, this is terrific. Thank you so much for coming on. And just to say it again, where can people reach you and read about what you're doing on the
Uh,
internet?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm mostly active, I would say, like on LinkedIn. So if you search my name, Annika Lindstrom, I will be there and make sure to to respond to any messages that would come in. And then also on our website, which is reminded.fi. We still have to get the .com domain for sure, but for now it's reminded.fi. So you can find it right there.
Okay, well, Annika, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
This
Thank you
is
so much. This has been great.
yeah,
Really
no,
enjoyed the conversation.
I've really enjoyed it. And thank you, folks. Please check out Annika at the address she just gave you. This is Mental Health and Business signing off. See you all next time.